and the players come out. The webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop, look, and listen for a little while. Pay no attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow, bathing in your blood. It's never enough. And here we are.
Yep, there you go.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It's Sunday, November the 7th, 2021. We're doing our first show live tonight. My name's
You are
Cliff.
live this time, not
That's
just
right.
live.
Not just alive, I am in fact live, and so are you. I'd like to welcome you to my basement abode
This basement.
and welcome you. So we're setting up, running the OBS service so we can do live streaming. We should be able to add multiple platforms when we get to that. But we'll also be adding a Skype or Discord so that we can have you guys call in if you feel so inclined. If you want to contact us, you can do that at the ironmountainhour@gmail.com. And if you got ideas for shows, if you got personal experiences that you can relay to us about some of the show topics, or maybe we get something wrong and you want to correct the record, but you don't want to, come on the show or whatever. That's cool. You can email us and tell us that.
Oh, look, I can point.
Iron Mountain Hour. There you go.
I feel like a weatherman.
Yeah, I've spent some time the past few days trying to learn this software a little bit. Sometimes you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I've still got a lot to learn on it, but I have learned how to do stuff like you were saying, point at us or tell us, to help us grow the channel by liking and subscribing and sharing and commenting on the channel. That would be great if you wanted to do that. And I'm supposed to have the comments over here on my right side.
Even a dislike is an engagement. Turns
Yeah.
out. I found that out.
Come
How
out
about
and
that?
if you don't like it, tell us that too.
Hit that, smash that dislike
That's
button.
right.
I'm going to change that. I want to come up with a new word for that. Smash.
But this episode is, as we put on the title there, if everything worked right, and you saw that.
And my internet tanked completely, or I would tell you what's going on.
Oh, did it? Well,
5G, folks. That's what 5G is doing for you.
That's
The real
right.
conspiracy is it sucks. Sorry. Let's continue.
It does, though.
It does. It really does.
I have a 5G phone, and it does have a hard time picking up a lot of places where the 5G shows up on my phone.
And people think that why is that a problem? Is what people keep asking me.
Yeah.
Is because when the whole time you have 4G, it'll periodically start searching for 5.
Right.
And so you'll just watch your phone will just randomly go no connection, and then when it realizes there's no 5, it'll jump back to the 4 again. And that seems like a minor problem. But when you're playing like online games or your computer has like the auto save function on a program, it throws it all off. And so I'm mad at you. I don't know where I'm supposed to point now. I'm mad at 5G. I'm mad at 5G. Anyway.
Yeah, but the episode tonight was titled Carter County Honors Its Veterans and a Century at World War. So wanted to start off by talking about the Veterans Monument that was built in Elizabeth, and you've all seen it down by the courthouse there.
Cool trick, huh?
It was actually built in 1912, and down there around it's where the downtown area was back in 1912. So most of the area that we call the downtown area now was residential, and the only way over it was the covered bridge.
Was it residential on both sides? Because I know a lot of those houses, I guess from the courthouse perspective, you've still got a bunch of those houses going down through that neighborhood. Is that where all the houses were? Or
Well, on the west of the Doe, where the downtown area is now, that was primarily residential.
Okay.
The courthouse area, where the old courthouse was, down there around the monument. Now, if you can see there on the screen, the monument had a wood barrier around it. Yeah, and it had a Statue of Liberty. It was decorated. You can see they were running a bus through there.
It was Eagles.
Elizabethton was pretty. Yeah, I believe that's what it is. That's about the best resolution picture I could get of it.
So that mountain looks like with no Christmas decorations.
Yeah, but
I like it better, to be honest with you. Anyway, continue. Sorry.
But that area down there was the main downtown, the main commercial area around the courthouse there, where the jail is now, and that's the wrong thing. But the courthouse area has looked different over the years. That's what it looked like originally when it was built in 1852. That's a postcard, of course, rather than the actual courthouse. But here's a photo of the actual courthouse, built in 1852. I'm not sure when this photo is from, but it changes over the years to when the monument was built in 1912, and that area was called Courthouse Square. It was built for the veterans of the Revolutionary and the Civil War. And
you have any idea when that little building right there? I'm sure anybody that's watching this knows how contested that little building right there off to the side has been over the years. People wanting to tear it down, people wanting to put stuff in there, cheaper rent, government. Like, it's just, I don't know. There's all kinds of stuff regarding that little building right there.
That was the original jail, wasn't it?
I'm not sure.
Carter County Jail. I think it was. But you recognize the courthouse. Obviously, it stays pretty much as it looks right here. This was after a fire.
It's exactly like that.
Remodeled in 1933. 1913 is actually when the monument was dedicated, and it coincided with the annual reunion of the 13th Tennessee Volunteer Cavalry. So they had the dedication on October 10th at the same time. And back in the 1920s and 30s, like I said, that was the center of town still. So that was where the court clerk would read the election results, and folks would go down there and get the news of the day at the town square. And back in 2002, now, see, that was when they originally started. It was for the veterans of those two wars, but they changed it and made it for the veterans of all wars.
Okay.
I think there's even a plaque that says to the veterans of all wars down there
I believe you're right, yeah.
Monument Square, which is a circle, oddly enough. But we see that monument, kind of all over the world. But here we're using it to commemorate our veterans from Carter County. And then we also, in 2002, we erected the War Memorial here. I'm sure you've seen that. If you're from Carter County, if you've not, come on down and see it. It's in downtown. Just search Carter County War Memorial. It's easy to find. But there were 258 people from Carter County are on that War Memorial. There's 5,700 total names on the memorial. So that's the way we honor our veterans here in Carter County. And veterans make up a large part of the population here in Carter County. And I think Tennessee has historically made up a large percentage of people in the armed forces.
Military status, yeah.
Yeah, because
volunteer state. Yeah.
We have a reputation for volunteering. My father, both his brothers, his dad, two of my brothers have all served. And way more than that, my mother's father. Most of my family has a veteran very within it or very close to it.
I have an uncle and two cousins without thinking.
Yeah.
But plenty of friends and stuff. So.
Yeah, so it runs in this area, and a lot of the guys I went to school with went into the military and served, and we really appreciate their service. I got this shirt. They had it done at Walmart, and I try not to buy much at Walmart, but I got kids, man. I gotta put them in clothes, and they grow every year. So sometimes I have to go to Walmart and buy some clothes because you know how it's tough out here. But they had these shirts. These were they were donating to a veterans group if you got them, and they were actually made in USA. shirts, and they had some that said, you know, value freedom, think a veteran, and then they had one for each branch of the military. And they had a few different designs, but they're all made in USA shirts, and they have, you know, they support veterans groups, and I just thought it was pretty cool. So I went ahead and picked one up. Actually, I picked two of them. I've got one for me and a different one for my son. But you know, if you're in Walmart, you might check that out. It was.
It's almost like word vomit at this point when somebody says, "If you're in Walmart," and I'm not trying to.
Yeah, no.
I'm not trying to do it as like I'm too
No,
good,
I know what
too
you
good
mean.
to be in Walmart. I swear, over the last years, just got years of just going into Walmart, just the trauma of just the being around. It's not even the workers. I don't blame anybody there.
No.
I blame the store, the way they make these people behave. And I blame everything. Anyway, I try not to go to Walmart.
Yeah,
but I'm glad you actually got something of value there.
I try to avoid it. I really do. Occasionally, I'm not able to. When they decided they didn't want their customers to carry in the store, and they didn't want they stopped selling pistol ammunition. I decided, well, I'd rather just. I already don't like shopping there. That's kind of like.
That's a strange man. I was actually really surprised by that because like, you would think, just looking at your demographic, you would know which side of the battle to be on financially.
Well, it happened. It happened right after there was a shooting where an armed citizen stopped a shooting, and I think it was in a Walmart, and then they asked customers to stop carrying and stop carrying pistol ammunition.
Because this guy stopped the shooting, they wanted no one to carry for now.
Yeah, they stopped carrying.
A strange message to send, isn't it?
and they stopped carrying. They stopped carrying 5.56 for the AR-15, but they kept carrying 308. I noticed, which was pretty funny because. You know, you could fire that of an AR-10.
Now, an AR-15, that stands for automatic rifle and 1,500 bullets a minute, right?
Yeah, that's it, Tim. You got it. Yeah, you got it. Nobody correct him.
I love saying just the most banana stuff around like gun people.
Yeah.
Because they don't get that I'm being funny and they're just going. It's funny.
I just thought it was silly that they.
It's called Armalite.
They said they didn't want to carry the AR caliber, but they started carrying the 308. They kept carrying 308 for a while.
Yeah.
In some places they stopped
altogether.
So they were
selective about what bullets they carried.
Yeah, they were. It was one of those times where the AR-15 was in the news for whatever reason.
Yeah, I remember the AR-15.
Yeah, and they stopped carrying pistol ammunition at the same time. But anyway, I noticed that. So I was like, I'm not going to shop here anymore. But about a year after I hadn't darkened the doors in a year, and I hear on the radio, Walmart has record profits this quarter. God damn it! Like they didn't care a bit. So every now and then, if I have to go in there, I will go in there now. But I still try to avoid the place. But
I do my little protests from time to time. The only one I'm trying to think if there's any that I've actually been really loyal to that won't make me sound just petty. But if I'm being honest, most of the stuff that I've been loyal to is pretty petty. So I can't
you just don't want to go there, huh?
Yeah.
Let's just move on there.
I'm not saving the environment. I'm just mad about something.
Oh, but the old obelisk there.
Oh yeah, back to the obelisk.
Obelisk.
I know that's not right.
Let's see. I don't guess they can see on our screen unless I give him the okay here. But we've got the picture of an obelisk there.
Can they not see that one?
Yeah, they should be able to see that one. And that's in the Place de la Concorde.
Where's that at?
Place de la Concorde. I'm not
entirely
sure. That may be it. I thought that was at St. Peter's Basilica in Rome.
That is right.
That may not be the one I was actually looking for. I'm still new at this, folks. I'm learning.
Well,
but you guys know what an obelisk looks like. Yeah, we don't have a producer around here.
Sure we do.
Well, it's me for right now. But
okay.
we're still learning, and we will get better at it as we go. Our microphone.
I think a lot of times there it is. It's good. Okay. A lot of times when podcasts start adding producers and adding crews, you start like losing people.
I don't want to add.
I don't want to add
anything
crap
like that.
where it's like,
No.
yeah, now your set looks like you're like daytime Tri-Cities looks nice because that's what professionals do.
Well,
this probably shouldn't look good.
Right. Well, I don't want to be too pretentious, but I do want to put some kind of background up other than my lovely black sheet here. But you know, we don't have that yet. We're still in the building process, and we'll keep picking it up as we go, keep building as we go.
If we get committed to it, we'll put laser light shows on and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Yeah, you never know. We may make it regular cyber.
Was you gonna
space up in here?
I guess to tie what we were doing, since I'm way out there right now, way off base. The obelisk is found in a lot of different cultures, and you were showing it there in Rome, and then you were showing it in Elizabethton, honoring the fallen veterans. And my question would be, why do we keep using giant penises to honor things? And why have did cultures do that, or were cultures just celebrating the penis?
There it is in St. Peter's Basilica. Right there.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Look at that right there.
When
Cross
you do
on
go
top of a penis.
When you do go back to ancient Egypt and the myth of Osiris, or Osiris, however you pronounce it, as you mentioned, Tim.
Let's go with Osiris.
The monument, the obelisk, did represent his penis as he was, hacked to pieces? Or?
Yeah, like Castlevania 2'd him with the Dracula, and, well, I guess that's a stupid reference. We'll say William Wallace. They divided him into the winds. And see, like we was talking earlier, like, with the Egyptian mythology, though, when they start talking about the penis, Osiris's penis, like, there was other parts of Osiris. It wasn't just his penis that they were,
Right.
But,
that was the only part I remember doing. The Isis was after his penis.
But well, you got the eye too. We always get the eye of
That's
Ra,
right. Yeah.
But the reverse is the actual Osiris.
Yeah.
And so we forget that it's a lot of I don't want to get too deep into like theology, but a lot of it is just symbolism that we've clung to, and I don't want to say perverted, but like made it into something that wasn't. And I don't know necessarily if maybe I should just go full crazy on it and just say something else. But doesn't it seem strange that we're celebrating people using a giant penis? That's all.
Well, if folks want a kind of a primer on the things that Tim was talking about there, there's it's a deep subject. You kind of have to get a little bit of background into it, and a good place to start on that would be the Manly P. Hall book, 12 World Leaders, and you kind of go into a lot of the Egyptian mythology and where a lot of all this started. So for more info on that, I suggest that's a good book. It's only about 150 pages, probably long.
I think you can actually, if you're into it, you can find people reading it on YouTube now.
Oh, really?
Like Audible, yeah. I know it's weird, but I've been finding Manly P. Hall, been finding Rudolph Steiner, finding all kinds of stuff that I wasn't expecting, but just kind of like an Audible sort of situation where people just read it.
Well, I use a podcast app called Castbox, and
I've not heard of it. Okay.
It has mostly public domain books on tape for free, but there's a lot of good stuff on there, and and you can find stuff like Steiner and older. Older kind of stuff.
I really think like I don't want to get off. Maybe we can pin this for a different. I really think that I think like the culture, zeitgeist, whatever word you want to use for it. I feel like the hive mind is being guided back into that sort of stuff. Like almost every. I'm finding people are starting to find interest in exactly what, like Manly P. Hall. You don't ever hear somebody say that, and yet I've had people mention that name a couple. You ever heard of Manly P. Hall? And it's like, yeah, but I don't know why the hell you're asking me about it. And it's just, I don't know, stuff like that's become more popular. It's very interesting to me that because it's boring to people.
I hadn't really noticed that, but I do notice that. I have noticed that like you say, it's boring to people. I've not met a lot of people that are interested in discussing a whole lot about it, or interested in the ideas in it. Really, I don't guess. But I don't have a lot of good conversations as far as deep thoughts and stuff with people anymore. It kind of has become few and far between.
I just think maybe it's
compared to how it used to be.
Well, I never thought I'd be okay. Maybe this is a good thing. Usually, when I start talking about Nutty Professor nonsense, I have to like not go real moronic on it because people just don't know what I'm talking about. And it's not like a smart I've read more thing. It's if you don't know the context to get from point A to point B, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's just if you're not already interested in it and you're
not going to dig into that subject. So it's do you know the whole Ahriman Lucifer principle? Okay, well that goes into a subject called theosophy. Steiner talks about it a little bit. Would be the easiest one I could find. The principle of it is you can take the mind out of just spiritual, physically, just take your mind out of it. It's the notion that the human hive mind has two principles that we'll call Lucifer and Ahriman, and we'll get rid of the idea that it's good and evil. It's so strange that we're talking about this right now because somebody was talking about, we were talking about this at a winery earlier, and then we started talking about here, and that's the only reason I'm bringing it up. It's the idea that the human hive mind tips back and forth, and it'll collectively be obsessed with fantasy, which would be Lucifer, and then as the human hive mind goes, it'll slowly tip back towards the middle, and then slowly tip towards what's called the Ahrimanic principle, which is rugged human progress. There's no such thing as God. We just need to get as far in advance as we possibly can. And a lot of people that know what I'm talking about with that thing, everybody I've listened to online keeps saying that we're in the spirit of Ahriman right now, and that's complete nonsense. We're in the spirit of Lucifer right now because everybody is in complete fantasy right now. So whether that's spiritual or physical talk or not, I just think that's interesting because that's come up several times. But it's not something I necessarily believe. It's just something that topics that keep coming up online recently. And then you said Manly P. Also, I had to bring it up.
Right, gotcha.
Penises.
Well, to kind of go through some of what he's talking about. Obviously, you guys have seen these. I hate when people on YouTube say "you guys." I'm gonna try.
You
not
guys.
To do that. God, I hate it.
Use guys.
It drives me crazy, but I see how they do it because I just did it.
I hate to keep coming back to that, but does that not blow your mind that there is a cross in the Vatican on top of a giant penis?
Yeah, well, like when we go back to the myth of Osiris.
I guess I should let you get that out.
Well, I'm not even on those. I thought I was on those here. But when we go back to the myth of Osiris, it always has represented fertility.
Yes.
So when we're looking at young men perhaps going off to fight in a war, there's a Nordic, looks like some kind of rune on it there, but overall, still a dick.
It's also a representation of as above.
Yeah, it is.
Fire
and when you look at them from above, they have the total different view. It's like a God's eye or something from above. Mm-hmm. This one is in Luxor, and that's in Egypt.
Is it Egypt or did they move it?
I think. Well, I don't know. It may not be. It says Place de la Concorde. That sounds like France, but it may be Egypt. I don't know.
Who knows?
It also says it's in Egypt there.
Place de la Concorde could also be Italian because when you're reading it, the languages look similar.
Okay.
I could be full of shit, but. I know that the Vatican has at least 4 obelisks that they took from ancient Egypt and brought to the Vatican. Man, that's a weird city. It just is.
You've been there?
I've been. Like, no, I'm not like. Like the only reason I went there is because we went there for some reason, but I really wanted to go at the time.
I would love to go.
It's a weird city, even if I hadn't been.
Yeah.
And it is. It's just weird. Anyway.
Well. I guess it's a celebration of traditionally, you kind of have those penises kind of everywhere, and you have
sorry.
Well, you have boobs, like the Capitol building's a boob, and they're kind of all over the place. The rounded Capitol buildings, in particular.
Well, now that I'm thinking, ain't that wild? Since you're talking about Capitol building, that Washington D.C. is all creepy like that too, just like the Vatican, and that's the main city.
Mm-hmm. Well, as I understand it from basically the Empire of the City theory, then the Washington is the military headquarters of the global power structure, where the City of London is
banking.
The banking, and the Vatican City is
religion.
the religious, the
Which
ecumenical
they got a lot
center.
of history stuff done there too.
Yeah, they
so.
do. They got all kinds of stuff in the vaults of the Vatican, and they all have kind of those similar layouts. When we talk about London, we're talking about not Londonderry, we're talking about London City.
The city of London.
Yeah, the city of London. It's
which
a
is
total
a different thing. If you don't know what that is, you
Yeah.
can look at it. Look up London, and then look. The city of London is a city within London. Whereas, yeah,
And
that's
they have
rabbit
a lot
hole.
of strange customs too, don't they?
Mhm.
Where like the Queen has to come out and walk. She has to go down and bow down before
Mhm.
the mayor of the city of
A
London.
lot of wild stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Since
What is
you're
it she
doing that-
does?
I don't know.
I can't remember.
I know, but once you said that, when you say it's where it's a city within a city, the Vatican is a city within Rome.
Yeah, they're each a city state, like
Yeah.
an old Athens or
It has
Sparta
a separate.
style.
It has a separate stamp. Has a separate zip or whatever they use in the Vatican.
Different country code.
And the Pope's not even, the Pope's not even guarded by an Italian military. He has the French Guard,
The
which are
Swiss
these
Guard.
guys, Swiss Guard,
Yeah,
and these guys that look like they're dressed in like jester outfits, like
Mhm.
striped from head to toe.
those
and
Swiss
they are
commandos
not messing around.
badasses.
They are not messing around. They are way more serious than even the guards in front of London. They'll run
Yeah.
your hind end over, and they'll do it while wearing a clown outfit.
So stay out of the way of the Pope Mobile. For real. I wouldn't want to get in the way of that guy, old Pope Frank over there.
I'm not. I can't remember. The last one stepped down, correct?
Yeah, Pope Ratzinger, Benedict. Yeah,
That did
that's
not hit-
that's unheard of.
That
man.
did not hit United States news very well too, because there's so many people that I've mentioned that to. They'd be like, "That happened,"
Yeah,
and it's like, "Yeah, we just didn't report it."
yeah. Well, I remember that. Wasn't that when they had the smoke burning forever while they were, or was that when? I mean,
It was when
a
he
really
got
long time. That was when
the one that stepped down was the
Yeah,
one
that
that
was-
took forever.
Yeah, that was Pope Benedict. He was the one they picked forever. But yeah, it was kind of. That made a big splash in
Mhm.
American news.
Because people are like, "Wasn't he out in the
But
youth?"
John Paul, what happened with John Paul? I don't really remember.
Was he the one that was
John
before
Paul
him?
II, when he was before Benedict.
He was apparently a pretty loved one. Like he had books and stuff
Yeah,
like that. And
I
he
remember
didn't.
that, but I didn't remember how he left the papacy, as it were.
Oh, how'd he die?
Or did he die while he was in
Yeah,
the
he
chair?
died.
Okay,
Yeah, he
that's
actually died,
that's what's normally
Mhm,
what
and
the
this
Pope
one's-
normally stays until he dies,
Yeah.
right? So it's pretty.
Yeah. Well, they tried to spin it in the United States that he was stepping down due to his mental faculties. It wouldn't be right for him to remain pope because he had dementia or something.
Mm,
Because the United States didn't spin the real truth,
interesting.
which
Well-
I won't even mention because it'd take us down a huge rabbit hole. What
Yeah,
really happened?
Yeah,
You
we
can
we
look that
really
one
could
up.
go a long way in that direction.
But you
with,
can let the BBC explain that one to you. They got good coverage of it. So
But Pope Francis there, I think he's the first Jesuit Pope,
is he?
which is
Is he the new one?
which is a whole different.
That's a whole. I don't know
different
which one's
rabbit hole.
worse, the
Yeah.
Nazi or the Jesuit.
So, but anyway,
I'm playing people.
we'll go back to the.
Obelisk.
No, we'll get on to the other task there, because I think we've about discussed this, the obelisk. I mean, it's I think it comes down to it being a symbol of fertility, a symbol of
Mhm.
male virility. That's who we're honoring, who are the young men who enlisted to
Mhm.
fight for their country, who enlisted to protect their people at home, who enlisted to do whatever it was that they were doing, that the government was, selling at that time to convince people to enlist in the military. And that's what I wanted to talk about. As we honor our veterans, let's not set our veterans up to fail. Let's not to fail necessarily. I don't want to say they failed, but let's not fail them by doing things like we've done over the past. Like, look what we did in Afghanistan, basically giving those guys that are awesome at everything they do, but not really giving them a winnable
Mhm.
task, a completable task. So that was kind of just a big waste of 20 years over there, if more. But even if we go back, I called this second part of the show a century of World War, because if we go back even to World War One, we're right at 100 years after World War One, and Armistice Day was signed on the what was it, the Treaty of Versailles, that ended World War, or was that ended World War Two? I can't remember.
Two, pretty sure.
Yeah, well, whatever the treaty was that they signed,
I'll
the Armistice Day, it was 11/11 of 1918. So we're a little over 100 years removed from the First World War. And you kind of had a lull, I guess, there for 20 years before it really started back up, and Germany invaded Poland, and then World War II really got up and, into full swing.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of just the world's kind of stayed in a constant state of war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it has before then too, but it just kind of seems like America's involvement in war has kind of been constant since then.
I feel like what we've done now, well, I guess. Wait, let me do this. I have two thoughts. I feel like what we do now is not is we try to pretend like the countries that are at war aren't actually at war. Okay, like for example, how Afghanistan will go and start attacking Russia, and then we'll pretend like the United States isn't funding it, so it's not a world war at that point. It's
Right.
just Afghanistan attacking Russia, and that
Right.
happens all the time. We pretend like
Proxy warfare.
There's all this weird like. Of course, it could have been happened back then too. We really don't necessarily know. My other thought though is when you were first prefacing the veterans thing, because I know people they really get bent up when you don't support certain things, but I think I can't remember who it was or I'd quote them. They said it really well, and they said, "Of course I support the veterans. I just don't have to support the meat grinder that they're being thrown into."
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's sort of how it is. If I'm being asked to be sent somewhere, I would like to know that I'm not going to be hamstrung later.
You like to be doing it in good faith, for
Yeah.
one. When we go back to even before World War One, if we go back to 1895 and the Spanish-American War, my daughter just happened to be learning this in school the other day, and they talked about it. And I'm sure you remember yellow journalism, and Pulitzer was one of those guys. And they give a prize in his name. That's the most prestigious prize, in journalism now, is after one of the yellow journalists. But journalists, they wrote a lot of articles that convinced the public to go to war with Spain over Cuban independence, and there wasn't really an appetite before, but then when the USS Maine exploded, it's sitting in harbor in Havana and exploded, and the American press, they convinced the American people that the Spanish had blown it up because there was the Cuban independence going on at the time right then. And the social studies book, it mentions that the yellow journalists riled everybody up, and that we all agreed this was a bad thing, that they lied, that the USS Maine didn't actually explode from the Spanish. It actually had an ignition inside the armory, or the what do they call it, where they kept all the ammunition,
Mm-hmm.
and it blew up from within. But that didn't stop the folks from riling up the Americans into supporting war with Cuba. And they also with Spain and Cuba. And they also propagandized, these papers did, with images of people being, tortured and stuff that were drawings that were greatly exaggerated of how the Cubans were being treated under the Spanish there.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing they barely mentioned in the book was that there were people who stood to lose a lot of money on the sugar crop in Havana. But they didn't mention that those people owned the newspapers. Right? These were the newspapers that were really pushing this, were the ones owned by some of the same guys that were selling sugar, and they thought their sugar trade was about to get cut off. So they supported American intervention in Cuba, and they used their newspapers to rile the people up for it. And that's what was so bad about yellow journalism, not just that they convinced people into a war that we didn't need to go into, but that it was actually, big industry interest doing it for profit.
Ain't that funny that right now that's one of the number one topics that you can find across all the internet, whether it be a Timcast, or you can even go to a left-leaning one that I can't think of at the moment.
Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy Dore actually, he was actually, to give Jimmy Dore a lot of credit where credit's due, he has really been on top of all that war stuff.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the
I
reporters and
love
the
Jimmy
Sarin
Dore.
gas. The only beef I have with Jimmy Dore is I think he's way too quick to rile up people to kill cops. That's my beef with him.
Yeah,
but
that, and then he always...
he's the kind of the, how we say, bitch made for spitting on Alex Jones. You don't spit on somebody, Jimmy.
Yeah,
Good
no,
God.
Man. And that he always ends up back with, and that's why we need Medicare for all. And
I guess I forgive people for being stupid sometimes because he kept supporting Bernie, even and he would lose his mind when Bernie would do something. It's like I guess I agree. I can be okay with people being who they are. I don't know. I guess it shouldn't be surprising that he's calling out for dead cops and stuff too, though.
Yeah. Well, I'm fine with people being for Medicare for all.
He seems honest.
I just think it's funny how he will really twist into to get there. Make a lot of logical leaps to get to that. Almost anything he's talking about. But like Lee Camp, he's another one that's the liberal that's all right, and he's funny. And who's another lefty that I watch?
Let's think. Because I honestly don't consider
Secular Talk. I can't watch him anymore. I used to like him all right, but I think Trump broke him.
Trump broke a lot of people.
Yeah, but no, but a lot of people have kind of got off the anti-war thing over. It kind of fell off on the left, and I think you and I talked about it, Tim, at one point. I wonder if it wasn't due to the fact that more of the right wing side of the country or the red states kind of sent a lot more children to the Middle East in the early 2000s and on up through the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars. So I wonder, if they felt the brunt of that a lot more, and maybe that's the reason the right has turned more anti-war. I don't really know, but it's almost like you've seen the left kind of back off of it because they don't want to be on the same side as the right on it.
And I always think what happened with the right was kind of, okay, let me see if I can make this comparison. Almost how the left is focusing, let me see if I can say this without it sounding stupid. The right is giving up on its pro-war stance as far as being it's okay for us to send our kids now. And I think the reason they're giving up on that stance is they're starting to no longer fall for the BS of every war's a good war.
Yeah. Well, a lot of them saw, and their family members saw that maybe the reason that we were told they were over there wasn't the reason that we were actually there.
They've used their trust for too long, is what I mean to say.
And as we go on to World War I, you can look it up some more, but I don't have time to give you the full background. But you learn it's all about Archduke Franz Ferdinand being being assassinated. Yeah, I like Franz Ferdinand. They're a pretty cool band.
As soon as you say that name, I can't not get that.
You say, don't you know? Yeah, but. That's kind of what we're taught, but there was a whole lot more into it. That situation was set up. You just have to look it up with Cecil Rhodes and a lot of British elites down and it started in London and went through South Africa and basically ended up with that, igniting a powder keg between Serbia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire, both of which were backed up by Russia and Germany, and then you had England. And but anyway, we get into all this, and the American government, Woodrow Wilson was the president at the time, and he was kind of the guy who, before we got into the World War I, he was the guy who kept us out of the war, right? Because he had done one term, and not entered the U.S. into World War I. And the United States citizens like that, the newspapers even like that. They did a poll of the newspapers, and I think like 242 of the newspapers that they polled said, hey, let's remain out of it. And then they had like 20 of them that supported Germany and like 100 that supported England in the war. And so when 1915 comes around, the colonel, he's not really a colonel, but that's what he was called. Edward Mandell House, kind of like Colonel Sanders, but I don't think he was a Kentucky colonel. He was Woodrow Wilson's first advisor, and he's over talking to the King of England and talking about the Lusitania being sunk, which is kind of one of the things that led to America's involvement in there. So they knew this boat was coming over and it was going to have American tourists on it, and they also knew that it had lots of ammunition on it. And the German government actually even sent sent a newspaper ad to New York Times. They read several times warning people not to get on that boat because it's carrying ammunition and there's a war going on. So at least the advisor to the president, the main advisor to the president, wanted that to happen so that America could get into the war. Because when they carved up Europe after the war, they wanted America to be a part of that, and how they couldn't very well be in it if they hadn't, taken part in the fighting. So they got in there and let the Lusitania come on through, but that wasn't enough. Even then, the American people still weren't on board with the United States entering World War One, but they kept sending American merchant ships into the war zones, and the Germans had told, they were blockading England at the time, and it was well known that they were going to shoot them down, so they kept shooting American ships, and eventually the war was declared. And afterward, President Wilson tried to get everybody to join the League of Nations. So he wanted to set up, but the American people didn't join it. The American nation didn't join it. It was unpopular. But anyway, you go on to World War II, and then you have Pearl Harbor, and you look at that.
Where they had notice.
They locked up the weapons so the guys couldn't fight back, and there was discussion of how it would benefit the United States and England if we would join the fight. So that's several instances. That's well known, well documented. I mean, easily for anybody to look up where the government lied to get us into major conflicts.
One easy one also would be
major wars.
It the sarin gas when they went in to get Gaddafi? Was that right?
Yeah, I don't remember why they said they were going after Gaddafi.
Wait, is that the one with Bush? Because that's a really weird one.
They got Gaddafi in the Obama administration.
Okay, Gaddafi was the one that they got for using gas on his people. But you can go look at the journalist. Jimmy Dore was the one. Was the one that found the video of. Even the journalist, when they show her the bags where the gas was held, she's sitting there like smelling them. Oh yeah, these stink, and it's like.
You're gonna smell sarin gas, and you're fine, huh?
The one for Desert Storm, I'm wanting to say, was the one they were throwing the babies out of the incubators.
Yeah,
that's the one they used, and it turned out it was a completely fake story, and the girl that they had used in the news article was actually some prime minister's daughter.
Yeah.
And that's not conspiracy. You can actually look
right.
Up right now. Well, that's bananas that happened.
You mentioned that, but you go back to World War One. You look at babies on bayonets. They did a thing where they said the Germans invaded Belgium and were parading around with babies on bayonets, which the Germans really did burn some cities in Belgium and I'm sure some atrocities were committed. But they hyped it up to try to rile Americans up into supporting it, and still they weren't able to get us to support going to war. But when you have a mass casualty attack like Pearl Harbor, that's a direct action against you, and so of course people are going to support going to war against that. I mean, you have to defend yourself. But you go on into, I honestly don't know much about the Korean War, the Korean conflict.
I don't think they teach that enough in the United States, and now that you mention that, isn't that worrisome? Doesn't that mean that there's something going on there?
And it's been going on since 1951, which is right after World War II, and then we kind of went right into Vietnam right after that, which was the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Never happened. Look that up. I mean, they lied about being attacked in order to bring the United States into that war, and there's a whole other thing about what was going on there with drugs and smuggling money and all kinds of other stuff that came out later. But you go on and you look at the CIA's involvement in, the Middle East during that time too. You had overthrowing the government of Iran, and I think it was 1953. You had, you go on up to installing Saddam Hussein in the 1980s and using him to attack Iran. I mean, it just goes on and on.
It really is a wild, just like a Game of Thrones thing that people don't pay attention to because I hate to come across this because I think people think when I say stuff like this, I'm coming across as either a hater or an a-hole or something like that. But how do you say it? Go ahead and say something while I finish
Well,
this thought in my head.
it's not common knowledge. I mean, it's mainstream news, but it's kind of like, I like to say the news doesn't always.
Right there. We're so patriotic. We're so blinded by patriotism that we won't. I think it's a good thing to be a patriot, but I think it's when you become such a patriot. I'll give you. It's like football teams that like fans that pull for the team no matter how bad they suck, right? And I always would give people a hard time. Vols fans, I'm glad y'all are having a good season. It's great when y'all are happy. There's so many of you. But I used to give Vols fans a hard time because they would endlessly buy merch and support a team that where their administration kept making decisions that the fans hated. And so I feel like if people are so patriotic, at some point you got to stop supporting every decision that certain people make that you support and start questioning those decisions, so you could actually have a patriot. You could actually have a patriotism you'd be proud of, not just blind support. That's
patriotism, in my opinion, should be to the ideals of, at least in an American form of patriotism, should be towards the ideals of the country itself, and kind of why, what it stands for, and if it furthers protection of the rights of its citizens, and I guess that's where you have to start, and to decide if it's patriotic. But at the same time, people feel, if you're under attack, if you feel you're under attack, then that would also be patriotic to support, would it not? If you're, if whether or not you are under attack, if you're convinced that you are under attack, I would say it would be properly patriotic to support it. So the main thing is we have to have some sort of discernment, and I think one of the things that makes us having that discernment possible is now we have a lot of competing media resources. You used to only have 3 networks, and then you had the cable networks, and those were your main sources. You had your big city papers. You had AP. You had the New York Times. You had all these big city things that
truth dies in darkness.
Yeah.
Ironic statement for that organization. Isn't it?
No kidding. Washington Post. He's talking about.
It's a shame.
But you see, all these things are kind of driving public opinion. And even your local news stations are owned by out-of-state corporate entities for the most part. I know our television stations here are. We'll go into that on another episode. I'm still doing the research on it, but that ought to be a fun one, I think. I'm learning some interesting things about our local broadcast media. But I think what's really changing is we have access to stuff, although better than what you and I are doing now, but stuff kind of like this. I'm a consumer of.
That the filtration system has been hijacked or something.
Yeah. They used to have control over. You have 6 major corporations, actually 5 now that Disney bought Fox, still in control of most of the media that goes out over broadcast, but the internet has just grown exponentially. You've got so many different platforms. When people started getting deplatformed off of Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, you had these guys, I don't know, I guess the corporate folks thought that they were going to just give up. But really these large media companies, they don't really get a lot of views over broadcast media. They get most of it over the internet. But the thing is, they get through kickbacks from YouTube showing their video next. Like if somebody watches this video, say where we talked about guns at the beginning, I bet you it shows Fox News for your next for your next one. Or if we talked about something else, it would show maybe a CNN clip rather than something.
It's gonna be like it's gonna be one of those psychology how-to videos. How to know if you're schizophrenic or something.
But I just noticed they feed the big media in, even if you're watching alternative media or small media. We're kind of a combination of local and we're just world affairs, state affairs, whatever it may be. It's just whatever we feel like talking about at the time, and sometimes we're going to get good stuff that other people aren't discussing, that other people aren't noticing, and there's a combination. There's an amalgamation, I guess, of people around the world who are all doing the similar thing, and we're pretty new at it, but there's been people out there doing it since the early 90s when people really started getting public access television and really started having access to a lot of things to learn things that weren't taught in school and things that weren't taught even at university. A lot of new information came out there, and like you said, they lost their filter on it.
Which I guess we come back to last week when we were talking about whether or not all the conspiracy theories were from the CIA to begin with, to try to muddy the waters. But like, oh no, the filter's gone. Let's throw some crazy stuff out there. That way everything looks nuts.
Well, if you go back to the JFK investigation, they are on record as having invented the word conspiracy theorist to dismiss, but they also were putting other theories out there, insane sounding stuff, like you said. Why would they do that? I don't know. Joe Biden has released unsealed some of the JFK files. Trump unsealed some of them. Joe Biden unsealed some more, but there's still a lot that we're just waiting on. But maybe we'll see them someday.
Maybe none of it really happened.
Maybe
it's all just been a silent to keep our attention for however many decades.
It sure did, didn't it?
It is like that crazy fact where it's like one of the number one most watched pieces of footage, if not number one, maybe it's number one.
And the Zapruder film, it didn't come out till the late 70s, early 80s. That was when it became public. I think, didn't Geraldo Rivera break that? I think he did, man. And what a person to have broken such a huge story, but I could be incorrect on that. But when you get back down to it, the news has been used to build support for war. If you were alive during the build up to the Iraq War and the Afghanistan War, they beat those war drums day and night, not just on Fox News, but they were on CNN, they were on
It's really weird to see the left
network.
The left be so supportive of war, because once upon a time, because I grew up mostly on the right, my family was very right wing, and so I was always watching the opposite side with their say no to war, end the war, that sort of thing, bring on the troops. And now to kind of see them just kind of put their signs away and be like, well, it's not popular to talk about. All of our big people say this war is necessary, so we're not going to protest them.
Yeah. Well, you go back to the roots of progressivism in the early, and it doesn't have anything to do with party, Democrat or Republican. Theodore Roosevelt was a progressive, and so was Woodrow Wilson. And so regardless of that, what it meant was they were expecting the governments to start doing more things for people, and the part of that included the whole idea of spreading democracy and making the world safe for democracy. And that was kind of one of the reasons that they really started talking up for World War One. But you still see that today. That's kind of still the reason for a lot of it was, kind of the neocons in the early 2000s on up till, the neocons kind of lost power in the conservative party through, I guess, after Bush was out of office, and it just kind of dwindled after that, even though you could argue Obama was something of a neocon too.
Definitely had... I don't know the exact stats, but he did not diminish war.
Oh no,
he got a Nobel Peace Prize in 3 or 6 months, but he added so much stuff.
Yep, and he was the anti-war candidate, and that was kind of one of the things that convinced me that this was all bullshit. Was
the Democrats running? Yeah.
No, I mean I didn't necessarily fall for Obama, but I was optimistic. Maybe I could say, well, this guy. I like what he said in some of his speeches and stuff. I don't agree with everything, but he's against war. He's against torture. Has better ideas on foreign policy. So I was optimistic, like I said. I had already come around to Ron Paul by that time, so I kind of had a different idea philosophically, but still. The wars continued with Trump. The wars continued. I mean, there's some argument to be made, I guess, that there is a necessary element of protecting, where our ships go. I mean, we do have to be able to protect American travelers, American merchants. So, I, I mean, I kind of torn on this because on the one hand, I'm one of these guys that's like, why do we have 200 military bases all around the world? Wouldn't we be better off having military at home and not being occupying cities? But at the same time, I can at least consider that you might not be able to take a boat through the South China Sea, if we didn't have naval bases somewhere in the vicinity, close enough for them to send a cruise missile. You might not be able to travel to Abu Dhabi or Dubai, if it weren't for all that. So does that mean that that's a good thing? I don't know, but I can definitely see that there's more than just the one simple side to it. But at the same time, my main objection to the whole thing is that we are constantly ginned up or revved up by news media and government into supporting going and sending our young men and women to destroy another country and sacrifice themselves. And like I said, I'm really torn on it. But
I'm not torn. I'm pretty aware of where I'm at on it. I mean, on one hand, let's just bifurcate this sucker and let's just go with it. On one hand, I feel like I'm not smart enough to even go, or let's say educated, to attempt to understand geopolitics. Because what we're going to try to say is we're the bad guys, right?
Yeah.
And that's probably true. I don't know. My issue with that is I've seen how humans treat each other, and I'm absolutely not convinced that if tomorrow America flipped complete power to name your country, let's pick the best one. You fill your blank. It wouldn't get better because people have this I'm on top, I'm going to take advantage of everything mentality, and I know that's a black pill essentially to start throwing out there that I don't think any country would create a utopia. In which I guess my other thought on that is if every country was attacking each other. Yeah. And I just feel like this is like America is like the tail end of the Monopoly game. Like we weren't playing.
We were on we made it around the board the most times.
Yeah, and they keep saying like you'll hear like Jimmy Dore, you'll hear those guys, they'll say like a snarky mark like this is just what late stage capitalism looks like. It's no, this is what mid stage capitalism never going to end until it becomes full on fascist hive, everybody wearing a number on their face, or it's that's dark. I don't know, but this isn't late stage capitalism. It's just countries are going to attack each other, and I think we just happen to have been born in the one that was best at it, and I don't feel good about that. I think I've become kind of indifferent to it, to be honest with you, and I have no idea where to go with that thought. It's just I don't know what you're supposed to do when you're in Tennessee.
Well. Well, one thing I think is you can be, like I said, be discerning. If you when we're hearing this ginning this stuff up for us to go look at something we don't see effects of. Let's not be easily manipulated for anything. Whether it be going to war or social programs or buying a new product for Christmas because it's the most popular thing. But let's just let's work on being more of.
I think oh.
Go ahead.
Let's just pretend war's gonna happen, okay?
Yeah.
And let's rip off all the sarin gas hoaxes and your baby's being thrown out of the incubator. Let's just be completely. Let's just go full on savage with it, okay?
Okay.
We need oil, and so we're gonna go out in the desert and we're gonna kill a bunch of these people that live in the desert because we need their oil, okay? If that was the argument that they had given to the American people, and the American people had all risen up and said, they put their fist up and said, "Yeah, let's go get that oil," I would almost be more okay with it, but that's not how it goes down. It's always, hey, you see these people over here with a darker shade of skin? They're going to go over here and hurt these people that happen to be your kids or something like that. And then it's all, if it wasn't false pretenses,
Yeah.
I know that's so stupid.
No, but you could respect it at least.
I don't even know if I respected
to a degree.
I feel like an idiot now for saying that because it goes back to the Norm Macdonald Patton Oswalt joke when they start talking about Bill Cosby, and he says Patton Oswalt said, "I think the worst part about Cosby was the fact that he was a hypocrite," and Norm said, "Well, I think the raping was actually the worst part." So I don't know where I stand now, to be honest with you. I'm not pro-war, and I'm not anti-soldiers. I think humans kill each other. And I know that's dark, but I don't see a way around it.
I think it is, but I think it's just aware of as part of our part of what we have to learn as human beings is that about our nature. Like you, as a student of psychology, have so often mentioned that we need to pull some of this dark stuff out of ourselves and try to understand it. And you know, maybe look at why we're so easily led. And I'll try not to be that way, but you know, you even when you think you're above it all and you think you're so aware of everything, you don't know what the hell you're talking about. As being somebody who's kind of been into this information for going on 20 years now. Since I got out of high school, I guess I started getting interested in stuff like this. But I still know so little overall, and still so susceptible to the manipulation, even when I'm aware of it, at many times. So we all have a lot to learn, I guess. But
I don't know if I'm learning so much as just stumbling my way towards failure endlessly. Trying to not look like an idiot along the way.
Well, as long as you get back up, I think that's what anybody will tell you. But as we're drawing to a close tonight here at the Iron Mountain Hour, we do want to thank you for joining us. And you know, it's really something that I enjoy doing, is having this podcast here. And if you'll help me grow it, I think that we'll have a really good time with it, and I think you'll have a good time with it. And I think I'll learn a lot from you if you'll interact with me. I've learned a lot from Tim already. And
good to bounce ideas off of. I don't know, I wouldn't call it learn.
Well, I mean, yeah, no, it has. We've had a lot of good ideas, and we've got a lot of more good ideas for some of our upcoming episodes. I've been doing some research on Al Capone in Johnson City. If you've heard of the legends of Al Capone in Little Chicago.
Yep.
So I'm preparing a show on that. We may start doing some news stuff here.
I would like to do news stuff because local news stuff is so not very interesting. Like, they're not talking about real local stuff.
Yeah. Well, like the Smart Pole gets a minute and a half segment, and then they move right on without really talking about anything about it. But yeah, I've got the Al Capone episode coming up. We're gonna do. I'd like to do the transhumanism episode before too long.
I would like to do a transhuman episode. I'm sorry for doing that with my tongue. I forgot we were on camera.
Well,
transhumanism.
I think that goes right with the episodes that we've done so far on the Smart Poles and the Great Reset, and maybe even to a degree with some of the Halloween episode.
Ain't that
have
odd?
Some elements of it.
That news thing that you were on to, episode 1, Smart Poles. We were like, what crime in downtown? And now, magically, crime in downtown is supposedly so bad, Mid-City Grill's not going to be open past certain hours anymore because they said it's too bad. There's a couple of businesses saying that. So now the crime is there. And I guess that could be as a result of all the tourism being moved around and stuff. But now they got it, and the crime is there.
Dude, did you notice the black cube? I think I sent you a text of it that's right out there where all that stuff's happening.
I don't know.
Speaking of old symbolism,
you want to wrap that one into something, but we can do that on a different one.
Yeah, we'll do that on a different one.
You showed me that one. I'm well aware of the black cube symbolism. I thought that's probably a 15 to 20 minute conversation, honestly.
Oh, at least.
Those creepy people.
But yeah, like and subscribe and share. We're going to be coming back on Sunday nights. We're looking at the times. We're looking at 10:30.
If you could weigh in on time,
here,
actually,
let us know.
Watching it, that would be helpful to go ahead and help the people that are going to watch it live. Tell us when, because if you're watching it Like if you're gonna watch it tomorrow on your way to work or something, or while you're sitting on the pooper, you're gonna watch it on YouTube anyway. So, but if you're watching it live, we'd be very interested to know what an optimal time would be.
Yeah, because I figured we had been recording on Sunday afternoon, and by the time I got this uploaded to YouTube, our Halloween episode, I had it uploaded at 9 o'clock on YouTube, and it didn't actually get processed and become available to watch until 3 a.m. after Halloween, so that didn't work out. So after that, I decided to go ahead and get the live setup going, and it looks like it's working okay so far. So if you hear us okay, you see us okay, everything looks like it's working like it should, say, hey, I'm supposed to have a chat box right up here on my screen, but it's not there tonight. It was last night when I was messing around with it. But that'll be useful to actually be able to read the comments while we're doing it on the next episode. But we'll finish this one out, and we'll see you next time. I'm Cliff.
I'm a moron.
His name's Tim.
I'm Tim.
This is the Iron Mountain Hour. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.